Okay. Okay.
All right, and we are live. I'm here with Gamer Ahmer.
Yes. Howdy, howdy.
So I just found you on YouTube not long ago, like we were saying before we started, and I caught you on my buddy's podcast over there on the PlayStation Collectors, and noticed that you were kind of local to me. So I looked up your YouTube and I was watching a couple videos and found out that you are actually super close to where I live. We've gone to the same couple of shops and down where you're from, and actually you just put out a video. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, or maybe even less than that, where you went to one of my local shops, Just Press
Mhm.
Play.
Yes. I took a little bit of a trip. It wasn't that bad of a drive. It was within like an hour or so. And there's actually a few locations up that way. So I figured I'd just hit all of them while I was in that area.
Yeah, they're all pretty close. There's one like right down the road from me, like maybe 15 minutes, and then um, there is one about 30 minutes away, and that's the one that's actually moving to the mega location.
Yes.
So, and then there was another one that was maybe an hour away from where I was, but they closed that one down.
Yeah, they were telling me that I had just missed that one. I
Yeah.
remember seeing them post about it and they had like up to 90% off
Yep.
or
I was in the
something.
shop. They had I think I hit it when it was about 70 to 80% off.
Nice.
But I actually picked up a Ocarina of Time CIB that was like really beat up. It was like waterlogged and like kind of like peeling, and I was like talking to him. I was like, I don't know if I want to pick this up even at this percentage off. Like they're like, we'll do it for, I think it was like $60. I was like, you know what? Fine. You sold me.
Yeah, you can't beat it when you get a heavily discounted item.
Yeah, yeah. They're gonna be. I think they're maxing their current percentage off before they move to the mega store to like 20%. I think
Okay.
before they move and everything. But I was actually talking to someone today over at the store about the mega store, and from the sound of it, they're going to kind of do it in sections. So like when you first walk in, you're not bombarded by like toys and statues and
Mhm.
just all the non-game related stuff, which is very overwhelming if you're not used to those kind of places. And I get really overwhelmed when I walk in there because it's just statues and it's very small and crammed, and they were saying that they're gonna have like all of that stuff like in a section
Okay.
and have like their like games and trading cards and stuff all kind of separated from each other because it's apparently just a really big store, and it's gonna have like a second floor. Pretty
Jeez.
pretty crazy sounding.
Yeah, that's like one way I guess to do like a mega store where you literally have like sections, different floors. I mean, I heard their like warehouse sale that they did was pretty massive, so I could just imagine if they take a bunch of that stuff and try and make it into like this mega store. They probably have enough stuff to fit in there.
Yeah, I mean they were selling the what they call like the museum pieces, like the super like rare
Mhm.
stuff that you would have in like each store around the top of the building. So that's I wish I could have gone to the sales and bought some stuff, but that'd be a real dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, it was a little bit bad timing over here for me to go out spending all kinds of craziness, but you know me, I like to find all the deals anyway. So I don't want to pay full retail if I can, find something for a steal.
Yeah, definitely. So what got you started collecting video games?
Um Well, I mean, I always played video games growing up. So, like, I have older cousins and they had a Nintendo. So, I first played on the NES at their house growing up, but I was like just really, really small because that wasn't really, I guess, like the age appropriate game that like I grew up with. It's just because I had older cousins. And I just love playing at their house and I love watching them play Mario, and when they would die, I would get a chance, but I wasn't really good at video games back then cuz I was just super little. And then my parents got me a Nintendo 64 for Christmas one year with the Donkey Kong 64, and it was a Jungle Green system, and I actually still have that to this day. I have that Jungle Green N64. So I have a bunch of my childhood games like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, my cousin's copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, and just like a variety of games. And I kind of like packed it all up like over the years. And I had a PS2, and I think I like traded some of that in towards like a Wii, towards the Xbox 360. And after college, I got into my career, and then all of a sudden, I started like pulling things out of the storage bins and like the closets and the attic and the basement. And I was like, you know what? I want to start playing some of these games that I used to play back in the day. And I don't want to always play the brand new games. I don't want to spend, that money on these new games when I want to play some of the old stuff. So next thing you know, I go into this flea market. I buy more Nintendo 64 stuff. I buy an NES. I buy a bunch of games. I buy a Super Nintendo. I buy a bunch of games. I buy a Sega Genesis, a Sega Saturn, and the collection kind of goes crazy. Because, I was still living at home for a little while until I saved up for my house. And I just went crazy and I just kept buying game after game. And I was finding them on like Craigslist and flea markets and yard sales. And they were like $5-10 for full lots of stuff, like a whole box of stuff.
The good old days.
And, you could easily just like spend like an entire grown up money paycheck on these items and you would get so much stuff. So like it became like not like hoarding in a way, but like it sure felt like that when I was bringing in like so much stuff. And it
Yeah.
just it kind of spiraled a little bit, but I think for the better.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. Like I didn't have my childhood stuff, but like I kind of always had like a selection of games. And as I grew, I would play like the new stuff, and then I was like, man, I would really like to play like a Super Nintendo or like an N64. So I would do the same thing. I would go out and I would buy, an N64 and look for deals on Craigslist or Marketplace or, thrift stores or wherever I could go. There was always a ton of like these little shops around me, and I would snag stuff here and there, like a toy that I remembered, like stuff like that. And it just grew and grew and grew, and my collection's gone through a ton of iterations, which we'll get to that later on. But
Hmm.
I was kind of the same way. I just kind of started picking stuff up when I found it, and but basically just hoarding a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like everyone kind of ends up going through a stage like that where they just want everything and they just like continuously get stuff.
Yeah, you just start grabbing stuff and picking stuff up, and you just continue to do it, and then you get to a point where like, all right, hold on a second. Why am I picking all of this stuff up? Why do I have this? And you have to kind of have that like moment where you're like, do I want to keep this or do I want to get rid of this? And normally when you get rid of it, you just buy other stuff with that money anyway. So,
Hmm.
do you have like a particular focus for your collection, like a specific system that you prefer, or a specific like type of game or franchise?
Um, I want to say it's kind of a little bit of everything still. I know that like things kind of like shift a little bit for some people and then they tend to go for one particular franchise or they go for like quality, over quantity. But I guess I've had like a little bit of I guess like waves of things over time. Like at first it was Nintendo 64 and then like all the games for it and then it was display items, kiosks, and then it kind of like shifted to well once I kind of did that, let me go for this system. But then, kind of like scattered into toys. Like in this room is like my toy room upstairs where I have my computer and more of like my like streaming setup and I actually like dismantled everything in the hallway so it looks really bad right now. But that's where all like my PS4, my PS5, my Xbox games are, like the new gen are out there. And they're in piles currently. Because I'm like redusting and reorganizing and getting rid of a shelf, so I have to like condense things. But for me now it's kind of like I am going for some full sets. So I need like 140 more Super Nintendo games for the full North American library. I do have a couple hundred of the Super Famicom games, but mostly going for the full North American set. I need, I think, 19 more Japanese N64 games for the full worldwide set of games. And then I need probably quite a bit for the GameCube and still a bunch for the Nintendo. But really, just like anything, like if I find deals on Sega Saturn or Sega Genesis, I'll pick them up. But if I find store displays, kiosks, standees, weird items with a crazy history, prototypes, that's kind of like my main focus. And I guess everything else is more like secondary to that weird, obscure, crazy, rare type of stuff.
Yeah, I watched a game room tour of yours, and some of the stuff that you have is wild. Like
Yeah.
the punch out standee that you have, like the one that you have like in the box still, like the original box and everything, like, and then some
Hmm.
of like the display stuff, the press kits and stuff, like some of that stuff is just so insane to come across anywhere. It's crazy. And like some of that stuff, it would be sweet to have, but like I kind of battle with it where I would have it displayed and sitting on a shelf, and then I would look at it and be like, I know the value of that. Do I really like? And it would just kind of eat away at me every time I saw it, and be like, I could get so many other things with that. Like,
Yeah, I think like my brain's weird. So like I kind of have like something in it where I'm like that's untouchable, you can't sell that. And like I don't even think of that as an option for certain things just because like ultimately I have like a greater purpose for some of this stuff. Um so like I don't want to get rid of some of this stuff, but then when it comes to like not like the main toy lines that have made it into this room, but there's kind of like a little section outside of this room which I'm kind of going through where I had like random board games that I found at the thrift store for like a dollar or two and some other random toy stuff that doesn't quite fit in with like the Turtle line or the Power Rangers or Nickelodeon or things like that that I'm willing to like those can go, but everything else is kind of like staying. So like even if something crazy were to happen and I needed money, like this some of this stuff would never go.
yeah,
Like I would find other ways.
I have a few things of that too. Like in the background here, that it's hard to guide my finger. That right there,
Mhm.
it's a T virus display from Resident Evil, and it's from like a Hollywood collectible group, and it's like
Nice.
numbered, and it was on Amazon that way back in the day, and you could get it. It was like at the time it was like 150 bucks, but at that time that was a lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And now like finding a price for that, it's crazy. But that's something where it's like I could never ever sell it. Just never. And like most
Yeah.
of the stuff behind me right there is just do not touch. It's never going anywhere. Forget that it's there because you can never sell it.
Yeah.
Because it was all stuff that I picked up very, very cheap at just stores at the time because collecting wasn't as popular as it is now.
Hmm.
And everybody wasn't on the whole collectible hype train where they're like, oh, wait, you can pick the stuff up and sell it and make a living out of it? Sure, I'm going to do that. Which I think is sort of semi ruining the hobby for some people, or it kind of puts a little tarnish on it where you have those people that all they do is just snipe marketplace deals, snipe Craigslist deals, just go around to all the, cheap stores, thrift stores, and just snatch up everything and then sell it for, a premium. And you could ask them, well, what is that you have? And they're like, I don't know. I just know I bought it for $10 and it's worth 200.
Yeah.
It's gotten way worse since the shutdown and everything, but hopefully it dies down a little bit or becomes a little less of a thing that people do.
I think people like tend to shift a little more towards other things now. Like I used to see a lot more video game resellers. Like I would go into a thrift store and I would see them there and I'd be like, darn, I'm never going to find anything. And now they kind of like shifted away from the video game section and I see them like in the clothing section or I see them somewhere else looking at things to resell.
Yeah.
And some of them kind of have like they aren't really there anymore. But when you were first saying all that, like sniping Facebook deal, you sounded like me up until the point where you said resell, and I'm like, no, that's not me. But
Yeah.
the other stuff kind of sounded like me, to add into my collection.
Yeah, I used to snipe marketplace deals constantly just to be able to add stuff to my collection that I wouldn't buy at retail prices, but I'd see, a chainsaw controller and someone's like, "Oh, it's brand new sealed, $100." I'm like, "I'll take that all day long."
Yeah,
That's, I'm saving hundreds of dollars there. Or, a lot of PS1 games where you have that one that you're like, that pays for the whole collection, but I also get to add all these other things. So it's a bonus. Like I don't find that stuff anymore. Not to the point where I used to. If I do, like you're paying almost retail for everything, and people, they're not even willing to negotiate or haggle with you sometimes. Like I'm also into Magic the Gathering. That's a big
okay,
part of what I enjoy. And I sold off my collection a while ago, and I've just been trying to like get just the 10 cent, 20 cent cards. And so I've been trying to buy like someone's collection. And I'll go on Marketplace and I'll find somebody with like, 10,000 cards. And when it comes to like what they call bulk, it's not worth hundreds of dollars. It might be worth $100 maybe,
mhm,
and I'll see them selling it for like $500. And I'll be like, hey, look, bulk prices are this much. I'll give you this much for it. And they just send me an LOL and then they block me.
oh geez,
So it's like, okay, like we're not even going to haggle or negotiate. Or if I sell a couple of games and try and, get max value, it'll be a, 80 to 90% of price charting that I'll put it on, maybe if I'm feeling, trying to get my money out of it. And someone will be like, I'll give you $20 for it. I'm like, that's okay. And then they're just like, LOL, not willing to haggle. It's like, I
yeah.
mean, you came at me super low. Like you gotta respect that a little bit.
Now I feel like at a time and age where everyone has a cell phone, everyone has internet, everyone has access, you could literally just go onto Google with the image search and you could just take a picture of an item. You don't even have to type it in. Or eBay, you just take a picture of the item and they come up with like comps and stuff for you. So I feel like everyone nowadays has that access. Whereas back in the day, people going hunting for these games, they might run into a Little Samson or stadium events and have someone who priced it at a dollar or two because they didn't know. But nowadays, it's like that stuff is less likely to happen
Yeah.
just because everyone is well educated on pricing. And then even at like thrift stores, they have like little cheat sheet charts like on the back of like a Charizard Pokemon card and certain games, and they put like do not price in the comment section, like price is higher. So like even they are like starting to become educated on that type of stuff.
I have noticed that, yeah, because even with like their movies and stuff, their prices have just constantly crept up. They used to be
Yeah.
what, like $1 for movies, and now they're like, I think $3 to $4 a piece.
Hmm.
So they're just, and like books, the same thing. Books, you could go in there and they would pay you to take the books. But now they're like, oh yeah, it's like, I think they're flat rate $3 now. It's like $2.99. So like
Yeah, even
they're,
like games. They used to be $1.99,
mhm.
and one of mine is like $6.96 now. And I'm like, that's insane. Because
And
like the
they,
sports games aren't worth that.
yeah, yeah, they have them in the glass cases now, and it'll be, oh, here's Madden 2007. It's $15, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. so, so what do you
No,
enjoy
it's
the most about collecting video games? Like, what brings you the most joy about your hobby?
um I mean, it's like hard to say because there's a lot. Like, so obviously, when you're out there hunting and you find some crazy deal on something, like that's something worth noting because that's like it brings you instant joy, instant gratification,
It's a
and
hard feeling to beat.
yeah, like you feel like you're on like top of the world when you find that Mike Tyson's Punch Out cardboard stand he never used, and the person lists it for like $60 or $70, and then you try to give them more and they don't want it because they're like, well, I didn't take the time to look, so you could just have it, and you find that for like a crazy deal, and then someone offers you almost $10,000 for it, and you're like, oh wow, that's crazy to me. Because you didn't even expect it to be worth something like that high value. So I just literally have it in the basement, just sitting there because I'm like terrified to touch it, don't want to open it, don't want to sell it, don't really know what to do with it because it's like the only one in the world that we know of. And Mike Tyson, he even said it's one of his top 10 favorite items. And he has one, but he doesn't have a sealed one because he did like a whole article spread on his top 10 favorite items, and that's pictured. So, like, one day I was like, well, I could bring it to him, have him sign it. Maybe he'd buy it. Maybe someone would buy it. Like, just, I don't really even know. So that's like the crazy stuff. And then obviously it's like finding a game that you always wanted to play or that you remember playing back in the day as like a child, or you discover something that you didn't realize that you played back then, and then you play the game today and you're like, wow, that's what that game was, or something like that. And then the community, that's probably like the number one top part because there are so many people who are doing like similar stuff, and then you get to meet them at conventions or gaming stores or on YouTube or on social media, and that's like the best part.
Yeah, I can agree with a lot of that. I mean, nothing beats finding that deal where you see it on Marketplace and you're like, oh my God, that's an insane deal. And then you message them and they respond like, yeah, it's available. And you're like, oh my God, like I didn't think I'd get this far. And then
Yeah.
like next thing you know, you're on your way to pick it up and you're just, your heart's pumping the whole time going there. And then when you finally have it in your hands and you're looking at it and it's like, wow, I can't believe I actually scored this. This is insane. And then, yeah, like the community and stuff, like I don't have like much of a like local community that I know up around here, but like some of the game stores and stuff that are around me, the people are so nice, and like the people that I've met through social media and like starting this YouTube channel, they have all just like not even a question to if you ask a question or you need help or you want to just talk to them, they're just like, yeah, man, like, and they don't hesitate. They just respond to you super friendly. And like, I've met a handful of people that I've watched on YouTube and they've been exceptional, which is very rare these days.
Yeah, I definitely I feel like when I first started out, like trying to like meet people and like as I started, I guess like growing, like I think I was like more nervous than anything because you just always anticipate that people aren't going to be like how they are.
Yeah.
But then once you get to know them and you like spend more time around them, it's like, wow, all these people are just like cool, down to earth, like real cool people, and everyone's super helpful, and all that. And now there are some bad eggs. We all know that I've met a fair share of those people, but for like the most part, it's like it's crazy, and it doesn't matter like where you're from or where you live, because we all go to certain conventions, and it's like people travel all over from those, and then you start to like meet more and more people, and then you have people asking if you're coming out to California or if you're coming out here or there. And it's just like it's so crazy like how this community is. And it's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy just how, cuz I my job, I talk to a bunch of different people from a bunch of different walks of life, and some people are super friendly, some people are just insanely rude for no reason. Even on my commute, there are people that pass me on the highway and just flip me off for no reason. Like they're just, and you're just like, oh, okay, so you kind of get this expectation, and you look at these people that you've watched on YouTube or whatever, and you kind of put them in this, like, I wouldn't really say like a category of celebrity, but it's kind of related to that in a way. And you expect them to just kind of shrug you off because you're not in the same like bracket as them. But then they answer any question, they give you advice, they take the time to, watch a video or listen to something that you've done, and they give you feedback on it, and it's the most incredible thing, and it really does make you feel like you're like part of the team, so to speak, which
Yeah, no,
which goes a long way.
I definitely get that. And like I know people think of like some YouTubers and stuff as like celebrities, but I think more of them kind of think of themselves as just regular people. Like I certainly don't expect to ever be like if someone comes up to me, I'm not gonna like shrug them off or push them aside or be like, "Step away, peasant," or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like I would never be like that. So like when people come up and they're like, "Oh, I didn't want to interrupt you," and I'm like, "No, please interrupt me. Like,
Yeah.
please, like come up, say hi. Like I'm not like literally all the same. Like at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all people. None of us are. None should be on like a tier or whatever type of thing. Like we all start at a similar spot, and it's really just like the algorithm with things and stuff like that. So like I always think that it's crazy when you do meet one of those people who are like, no, I must be paid for, I must have this amount, I must, in order to take a picture or something. Like some people it's like get off your high horse type of thing.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't really like feel like that. And like I know like the internet's created like a crazy place, but it's like we're literally all like the same.
Yeah.
So it's like crazy to me when like people come up at a convention and they're like, "Oh, I felt so weird. I didn't want to say it." And I'm like, "No, please interrupt me cuz like my little brain is like all over the place at these events, and I'm like a podcast over here, or I have to go over here, or I have to do this. Like please just come up and say hi. Like we're all normal people. Like literally like right now, get sick like the rest of everyone else." So like got my cough drops, got my water, like
Yeah.
it's like we're all the same, and we all want to help each other out because this is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something that kind of separates you from the craziness of the world out there. And you're not supposed to create like these cliques or divides or negativity, out there. And, unfortunately, sometimes we get into a situation where someone is being negative and like you just didn't see it. And it's like, all right, I don't want to associate with that person anymore. I want to, be a part of the community and the positivity and all that. So
Yeah, and
it's,
like that's the key there is just remembering that everybody is just the same. We're all just
yeah.
trying to navigate this crazy world that we live in, and we're all just people. I go to a convention called Monster Mania. You might have heard about it because it's literally in your backyard.
I think I
Um,
heard of that.
it's a convention where you can go meet like movie people or wrestlers or
Okay.
people from TV shows, and they have some
Like
really.
horror related,
But it
more horror
started, but
stuff.
now it's kind of branched out to where it's like a bunch of different, like it's just like TV movies kind of stuff. So me and my wife started going, and you meet some like very high level celebrities. I mean, yes, you are paying for like a picture or an autograph, but you see these people and you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to be a nightmare, or it's going to be super quick and brief. But they're super nice. They'll sit there and talk to you. They just come up with to you like very kind, and it gives you a shock, which is a weird feeling to have this expectation, and then you get there and they're like, "Oh, hey, it's cool. I'm just like you. Like, let's
Yeah.
how are you? And what's your name?" And they like talk to you like a regular person, and it kind of like makes you feel a certain way. It's a good thing, but it's a weird, like, I don't know, it's a weird thing to describe.
No, I definitely get that, and I feel like a lot of like the voice actors and people that I've met, they're all like super nice too. And I've seen like some celebrities at some of these like big conventions, and they'll have like lines like super long
Yeah.
and all that,
Yeah.
but they really do. They like take the time to, talk with each person, and they may like hold up the line, and their person is like trying to get them to like hurry up, but you can
Yeah.
tell that they just like care and they want to take pictures and they want to chat with people. And
Yeah, we were.
I definitely think those people or like those celebrities are a little bit different than like some of like the content creators. And there's like
Yeah.
definitely a difference between like people who are like on TV and acting and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, I think everyone should just be nice,
Yeah,
to everyone. And
just be kind, and it's
because
it's what we all
yeah,
learned in like elementary school. It's just treat others the way you want to be treated.
yeah,
It's that simple. We have like it's talk to us like we're 5-year-olds. Just like, how do you want to be treated? That's
yeah,
exactly right. I have to do it with my 5-year-old. She goes, "Why is this person called me this name?" And I'm like, "Well, what did you do?" And she's like, "Well, I didn't do anything." And it's like, "Well, exactly. Just if you want to be treated nicely, then you treat them nicely. If they're going to be mean, don't treat them mean back, because it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not worth it.
yeah.
Eventually,
No, I
if it
agree.
gets to a certain point, yeah, be mean to them, but you know, maybe not at 5 years old, because none of you know what's going
Yeah.
on." So when you're out at like a store, whether it's a thrift store or a game store or whatever, you're a convention, how do you decide what stuff you want to pick up?
Um, so it kind of depends. So like they're all a little bit different. So if I'm at like a game store, I try to stay away from like the new toys and the new stuff. So like for instance, when I went into like Just Press Play, because that's a store that you're familiar with, how they have like all like the new figures of like the turtles and all that stuff. I completely just kind of like, oh, that's cool to see, but I don't want any of that stuff because I kind of have like like the whole line of like the older turtles and stuff. So I like try to stay away from like a lot of those toys. And then I walk around the store and I go, what's something different that I don't own? Because let's face it, when you do kind of have like a crazy collection like mine, there's times I've walked into stores and I'm like, I literally own everything in here, not to be that person, but I'm like,
Yeah.
You know, nothing here is like new or nothing here is different than like the common everyday average stuff. So I like to like look around and see like at the one store they had like the weird Nintendo oddities, like those Mario walkie-talkies, and then they had that Mario the shower
Yeah,
thing, like the
the
shower
shower head.
buddy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like I saw everything in the store and I was like, well, I've never seen one of those in person, and the walkie-talkies kind of looked a little bit beat up. And I was like, the other one's new. So I compared the price online and it was way cheaper than what the online was going for. And it was sealed. So I was like, I'll get that because it's something weird. It's something different. It has a story behind it and it'll look cool in my collection. And then I went through the games and I tried to go through and I had all the Super Nintendo games at the two stores because I'm going for the full set and it's starting to like narrow down. So then I was like, well, let me move on to Nintendo. And I didn't have a bunch of those games. So I just went ahead and, picked a couple of those. And then when I'm at conventions, I try to do like the same logic. Out of everything here, what is going to be the hardest for me to find, either for a great deal, either in like my stores around me, or like what's something weird that I just don't see. So usually it's some sort of display or standee or statue or like something wild and crazy within affordable, like I don't want to overpay,
Yeah.
but that's why I've bought like a Sega cabinet at the Southeast Game Exchange one year. And then the year after I bought that Super Mario 64 Kitty Ride that was unofficial that Nintendo sued them over and told them to destroy. So like I like to find the weird things like that that you just don't see very often or you don't see like ever.
Yeah,
So
sometimes it
yeah.
just it just talks to you. You're in a place and it just pops out and you're like, oh yeah, definitely 100% I have to pick that up. I'm not leaving without it. But when I walk into a game store, I have these like I have a thought of what I want to grab or what I want to look for. Normally it's, what's the cheaper stuff on my wish list that I want to grab. So I'll go in and I'll try and grab a couple of things. And then I see something and my brain just scrambles and I just completely forget like what I was doing there. And I'll go back and I'll walk a couple other things. I'm like, don't I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't just leave with nothing,
Oh
which is
no.
fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's sometimes I go in and I see it and I'm like, yep, that. I don't care how much it costs. That right there, I want that. But I did have an instance where I did go to a local game store. I don't want to put them on blast, but I wanted a Sega Game Gear game because I got the Analog Pocket with the Sega Game Gear attachment.
Okay.
And it's a console I've always wanted ever since I was a kid. So I was like, I'm getting this, and I wanted to get Shining Force. So I knew it was like $45 loose. I saw it at the store and I was like, hey, how much is Shining Force? And they were like, oh, it's $75. I was like,
Jeez.
that's a little high. I said, this is what it's going for loose. Would you sell it for this? And they were just kind of like, no, we can't. I was like, okay. So then I just left because that was what I wanted from the store. So I left,
Yeah.
and somebody, my ex buddy that I used to do this with, ended up buying it for me for Christmas, and he just got it on eBay for the market price,
Mhm.
and it was perfectly fine. So do you ever run into like that kind of situation at any stores where you walk up and you're like, "Oh, I'd love to grab this," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's $200," and you're like, "Okay, let me look it up. Let me figure out what it's going for." And they're like, "Oh, it's going for like 75," and they just are like, "Ah, I can't budge." Like, how hard, especially for something that you don't see, how hard is it to walk away from that?
Yeah, I mean, I will not overpay, like, out of principle, so I will gladly walk away. I've had it happen, like, several times, where I'm not that type of person either. You know how, like, some people go to a convention and they, like, buy a whole bunch of stuff before, like, the convention and stuff starts? I
Yeah.
typically try not to be that person, and I'll go somewhere and like let's say they have a game for like 45 bucks, but I would feel more comfortable at the $40 mark. If it's like a $5 price point, there's sometimes I will still walk away just because I don't want to overpay. Like if I can get it shipped to my house for 5 bucks or 10 bucks cheaper on eBay, like then I'd rather go that route because if I overpaid for everything, I would not have the collection that I have now.
Yeah.
And I know it's tough at times. Um, and there's also times where you get into bidding wars and, some people watching might have seen something like that happen at a convention and you kind of want to walk away, but like at the same time you don't want to lose. So like I guess I'm guilty of that at times, but it's for things that you'll never see again. And you know that the price point is up there, so like you're willing to do that. But most of the time I will just walk away like out of principle just because I don't want to overpay.
Yeah, there's certain things that once you get your mind set to it and you want it bad enough, it's really difficult to walk away from it. Like I sometimes when I'm at a place and I know what I want and even if it's super overpriced, like I have such a hard time being like don't buy it. Just walk away. Don't buy it. Just leave. You can leave without buying something. It's okay. You'll see it again.
Yeah, I think some people they get caught in that like I have to get something and you don't always have to get something. Like,
It's a
you
very
can
easy mindset to get into. Like when we were shut down and I wasn't working and we were getting just free money, I was like, "Oh, cool. Like I'll just buy like these games that I wanted and stuff like that." And I was just buying games just to buy them. And I was like seeing people's lists on YouTube videos and I was like, "Oh, I got to grab that game." Or, "Oh, I got to grab this and that." And my collection like boomed and it grew and I had all these like I wouldn't say heavy hitters, but I mean, $100, $200 games. And I got to a point where I just looked at my collection. I was like, "What what am I doing here? Let's reevaluate." And I've done that over multiple times throughout the past couple of years, like focusing my collection or moving it to where I only want to have these games or I want stuff that I want to play and stuff like that. And it's really hard to stay out of the mindset of like, "Oh, I just need to grab this game because I eventually want to play it." You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it looks like in the chat and stuff too, some people have went through that where they kind of like downsize and
Yeah.
um people have to adjust to like smaller spaces and stuff. A lot of people go through that. They kind of decide on what they're doing, what their focus is on. Like you were saying, like you have a bunch of heavy hitters, or you take a step back and you think of like, what am I doing now? I haven't personally experienced that yet. I've just been super lucky. Um, I guess because I have like a bigger purpose with my collection. I mean, I'm not gonna like advertise anything or
Yeah.
whatever, but
Yeah.
it's like at some point I hope that this stuff can be on display somewhere, whether it's me or like I donate some or whatever it is. But it's like I just always have that like in mind. So for me it's not like it's never like clutter or too much
Yeah.
just because of like where my thought is like going in the future. And then I do have like family and stuff that comes over around the holidays and I'll literally turn every single thing on in the basement and I let the kids and everyone run crazy. And like there's like little like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds just running crazy in the basement, throwing things around, just going insane. And people are like, "How could you do that?" And I'm like, "This stuff's meant to be played.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
fine. They're not touching the prototypes and stuff. Like, they're literally going crazy with the stuffed animals and the amiibo, and they're throwing stuff, but they're having a blast. And they're playing on the kiosks, and I'm switching games out, and I'm running around like a crazy person because I want them to have like a great experience. They're like all like my cousin's kids and stuff. And like, the stuff's meant to be played. And like the toy room, like, I don't care. Take the $100 figures off the shelf. Like, I didn't pay that for it.
Yeah.
Like, play with this stuff. It's meant to be, played with.
Yeah, you're
So,
you're a rare breed there, cuz I mean, even with my cheap 360 games, or like something that's just the most common title, like my daughter will get it down. Like most of the time I don't care, but if she like drops the case, I got to be like, "Hey, can you be careful, please?" Like, just because that's how my brain is. Just I don't know why, but that's great to hear, like that you know the purpose and you're like, "Yes, this is what it's made for. Go for it. Have fun. Do everything you need to do. I like just don't break it." Like,
yeah.
which most people are not that way. They have it, behind glass, and they're like, "Oh, hey, don't touch this stuff." And if
Don't
somebody
breathe
touches
on it.
it, they're just like, "Yeah, like get out of here."
Yeah, like, I understand that for, like, some things, like the prototypes and stuff that especially that I have that are not dumped, things like that. I definitely understand that, like, in a sense. Where, like, I wouldn't necessarily want them, like, touching all over that, but I could just close, like, the glass door,
Yeah.
and there's just so much, it's overwhelming, so, like, I literally, like, I don't know, I have, like, random toys and, like, random stuffed animals from, like, the thrift store, so then I just, like it's like you preoccupy them, you give this to a kid, like, this SpongeBob plush, like, you give this to them, and then they're like, "Ooh, that's not breakable," so then they, like, run away with it, or, like, give them, like, these big plush over here, and then they'll stay away from all the sealed stuff. So it's just like, it's fine for me.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It's it's a weird, like being a collector and stuff. It's a weird balance that you try and constantly remember. Is like, hey, I'm doing this stuff because I enjoy it. I like to
mm,
play my stuff. So that's the way I've focused my collection. Is I like to have stuff that I've either played or I want to play. And like most of the time it's stuff that I want to replay, and I try and not pick stuff up unless it's like a must or it's super cheap.
yeah,
And the way that I'm curating my collection now, and the way that I'm taking, my YouTube content too, is I'm just going through my collection and I'm just choosing a game at random. I'll put it in, whether it's retro, whether it's current, and I'll play it, on stream, whether it's for 2 hours, or if I stream multiple days and I play it for 3 hours each stream. And then I look at the game and I'm like, is this something that I want to continue playing? If it's yes, then it stays in the collection. If I'm
mhm,
like, no, didn't really enjoy it, don't really care about it, didn't really capture me, I'll get rid of it and I'll move it out of my collection. Because I like the thing that I think about all the time is when, my daughter's starting to play video games. She comes down here, she'll play the NES, the Super NES, she'll play the Switch all the time.
nice.
And I'm watching her expand her realm of what she likes to play. So it's really cool to see that. So when she wants to come down to the game room and pick a game off the shelf and play it, I want it to be like, I know what this game is, I know what to do, or I know it's a good game, and I'll let her play it. And if she doesn't like it, then she can basically have that like experience where she gets to kind of curate a collection as well.
Yeah.
It just like I like having a purpose with my collection and like with what I play and how I play. It's just the way my brain works sometimes. I don't know why, but it has like I have to be doing something and trying to get from point A to point B.
No, and I think that's great too with like collecting because like everyone is a little bit different. And as people were saying, like in the chat and stuff too, you got it's crazy. I just talked about Southeast Game Exchange and here he is, in the chat. And then even Bacon talking about all this stuff, prioritizing what they want to play. Um, games will be enjoyed and played, and basically like selling some things off. And even with Southeast Game Exchange saying that curating a collection is great selling off those games you don't want to afford games that you do. I
Yes.
mean, it's great to see how people, do this. Like everyone's a little bit different. Everyone focuses in on different things. Like you have like Resident Evil right behind you. So it's like, people they have like more specific niches in this, and I think that's like great because everyone can be in this space. Everyone can enjoy something a little bit different. And I like seeing how everyone is. I think it's good that not every single person is the same, and like not everyone goes for full sets and some people do. And there's no like just because a game is considered bad doesn't mean it's necessarily not fun. Like I went through games and played them with some of my friends or family that come over or kids, and they love that game. And it was deemed a bad game that no one should buy. And it's just like, seeing that stuff, and it's like, they're enjoying it. So like if it was a bad game, then why did they sell so many? Why are there games like that that exist? So it's like everyone likes something a little bit different, and I think that's great. Like I think we all should kind of focus in on our differences and just like the weird little ins and outs, and don't necessarily judge people for collecting different, or
Yeah,
I like that.
that's what I like about doing what I'm doing and like getting to, talk to different people that are in the collecting space and picking their brain and being like, "Oh, why do you collect this way?" or "What is your way of collecting?" or "Why do you collect?" and like hearing all these different answers and seeing different people and what they go for. Like you are just like grabbing a bunch of stuff from all different, genres and toys and standees and all of this stuff that is just insane, and going for these like crazy sets and even worldwide sets, like expanding beyond the US set and going for a worldwide set. Like it's really awesome to hear different like people's perspectives on what we have this passion for.
No, I definitely agree because like I feel like if you limit yourself too much, it's like you miss out on things. Like I was just making a light gun video for the Dreamcast. That'll be like next week's video. And I learned that one of them just got an English translation for it. So like one of the games that was a Japanese exclusive, I'm like, "Huh, now I need to find that English, translation because then I can actually play it." Like cuz it is like a little bit more of like a text. Like I kind of want to know what's going on in the story.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just like it's so weird that like things like that exist and that things can continue to expand because it's like you miss out on so much, and then it's like I've learned so much over the years by finding like other weird things or doing research on things or like the history of stuff, and like I didn't know too much about certain video games or even like systems or stuff before my time, but since I've been in this space I've learned so much, and like I know these like crazy rare things and so much information just because I didn't like necessarily like put blinders on. I like welcomed it. So I think that's also cool too.
Yeah, it and with the way that social media is and like YouTube, you can find out anything that you could even imagine. You can find the whole history on this super obscure game that like nobody played, but this person made an entire video about it, and they go
Hmm.
into like every detail there is to know about its release, how it was developed, all of the little intricate things that happened during development, these weird like it's crazy to me like how much information is out there to like consume. And I love it. I love hearing about, you know, the history behind this game's development, or how many people played it, or how many copies it sold, and why it's so popular, and other people's opinions on it, because then it gives me a scope for when I get to it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to play it. And then I get to be like, what are people talking about? This game's fantastic. Or you get to be like, wow, this game really was kind of a turd. Like, I I listen to it constantly. I mean, I work outside, so I constantly have headphones in. I'm constantly listening to YouTube, whether it's gaming related or whether it's whatever I have on.
Yeah.
And I love just learning stuff about video games and collecting and hearing people talk about it and what they collect and why. It's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, and like that's kind of how I am too. Like I like to be stumped, so I like to like find something that I didn't even know existed. Like for instance, I found that Atari Roadshow CES case. This like big box. Like I made a video on it, and I remember seeing it listed on Facebook Marketplace, and it was in, was it New Jersey? It was right at the New Jersey New York line or something. And I was like, this is like really weird, but I feel like it has to be something. Like I didn't even know what it was. And I was like, let me message the person. I think it was like $50 or something. So I drove several hours away, and then I picked something up in Staten Island, like right over the line, and then came back home. And I got this big like case. It's like this big crate, and it has wheels at the bottom, and it says Atari on it. And the only one thing that I could find on the internet was like Atari CES Roadshow. So then I went on like this whole deep dive, and I was like, oh, the Consumer Electronics Show, like this crazy thing. This was probably what they used to put their equipment in. And that's sure enough what it was. Like I went on like this whole deep dive. I found like video footage at the CES, and like I found all this stuff, and that's what they used, like kind of like how bands they put their equipment in things and they
Yep.
like roll it on stage. It's
Yep.
like one of those like crates.
Okay.
And like at first glance you might think someone just spray painted it, but it's official. And like I went on this whole deep dive just to learn that it was something official that they used back in like the 80s, like late 70s, early 80s, and like Atari. And like I just thought it was like so wild that like people just pass over that stuff, and they just like, push it to the side when like that stuff has history. It has value to it, like the knowledge. Like knowledge is power. So it's like, I like being challenged, and I like finding weird stuff like that when it comes to gaming. And like
Yeah.
even though I didn't grow up with Atari, like I still appreciate it because it's how we have gaming and stuff today. It's like,
Yeah.
I appreciate like the whole, when like the video game crash happened, and all that stuff. And I just was on a podcast a couple nights ago talking about the Vectrex, and how we appreciate the homebrew community, and how we appreciate these people who do like these passion projects to keep that older stuff alive. They're still releasing games for the Vectrex when it came out in the 80s, and it ended in like 84. So it's like that was long before my time of being alive, but like I appreciate it, and I love playing that system. And I bought a full North American set of games, and I have several homebrews because I appreciate that. And it's like I love that with all this stuff. So it's like I never want to stop learning, and I like to find weird little things that I didn't know about.
It's always cool when you're in a shop, or especially like a thrift store or a flea market, and you find that thing where you're just like, what is that? And you try and
Mhm.
look it up like while you're there, and you can't find anything about it, and you're like, I'm just gonna buy it. It's cheap enough. I'll figure it out later. Like I was at Goodwill after work the one day, and they had all these movie posters. So they had Home Alone and stuff before I got there, but people were mad rushing to get to them. So
Mm.
like I walked in, and this old lady was there, and I was looking, and I saw a Jaws movie poster and an ET movie poster. And she's like, "Yeah, like I think they're signed," and I saw signatures on them, and I was like, "No,
Wow.
no way." So I grabbed the ET one because it was what I was like. That's just the one that I grabbed. And this guy came in, and he goes, "Oh, that was a good grab." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's like $10." So I walked around with it, and I was looking at it, and it has signatures from like the whole cast.
Wow.
And I'm like, "No way, this is real." But like it's sharpied on with different sharpies. Like it's gold sharpie and blue sharpie, and Like it
Huh.
has like it looks like it was signed from the cast. So I picked it up and I brought it home and like I did research on the signatures and like I don't think that they're real because like they don't really like look like they should, but it's a sweet poster. Like it's a super big poster and it's got these signatures on it and it's just like if I hang that up in our movie room, if whoever walks by it is going to be like, "Oh my god." And it's just that piece that they look at and they're like, "No way you have Steven Spielberg's signature." And I can just like mess with them and be like, "Yeah, it's right there. I got it at a
Well, you
Goodwill,
never
believe it."
know. It really could be.
I mean,
You
it
never know.
it very well could be, which would be absolutely insane. But finding those like things that you just immediately are like, what is that? And
They're
you
like
just
those conversation pieces.
exactly.
And, like, I have plenty of those, and, like, when people come over, they, like, they look at, like, the Mario statue in the basement, and they're like, "Wow, that's such a cool thing," and then it's, like, this whole story behind it, like, the game store or this toy store in Delaware had it, but they had it for 3,000, and it was faded, and then I came back a year later, and it looked like they touched up some of the faded spots, and it was marked down $1,000. And I walked out of the store and I kept thinking about it. And I went back and then they gave me an even better deal, And then here we got to load it into the car and there's luggage everywhere and it barely fits in. And then, boom, downpour of rain. Boom, flat tire. Boom, standing on the outside of the car with Mario now because you have to get to the spare tire. So Mario's outside in the rain. All these cars are driving past, trying to get the spare tire. This guy stops. He changes the tire for us. And then we need to find a tire shop, but it's like Sunday and every place is about to close within like 30 minutes. We barely make it. Mario has to come back out of the car, so he's sitting there in the garage while the tire's being changed. And it's like you tell the story and you're like, I'm so glad he made it here because there was a chance he could have got left on the side of the road. Like it's just like this crazy like story.
I love
Yeah.
that's I think that's probably my favorite part about collecting and hunting and stuff is like finding these things that like these Resident Evil toys back here that I have still sealed, like they were all found at these shops for like $20.
Wow.
And I just scooped them up and I've had them in my collection since the very beginning. And I could tell you exactly the store that I grabbed it from and like used to have an Xbox One kiosk down here and I found it on Marketplace and me and my wife went to pick it up and I had to wait for the guy to show up and he was like 30 minutes late and we're like, "Do we just leave?" But we
Oh
didn't
no.
and I grabbed it and it was great. And like those kinds of stories, like I love hearing that. I love telling that. Like when people ask me like, "Oh my god, where'd you grab that?" And it's like, I love that you asked. Let me talk to you about it for an hour about the story of how I got it.
Yeah, now it's like people try to like quiz me on that. They're like, "There's no way you remember everything that you picked up. Where'd you get this? Where'd you get this? Where'd you get this?" And then, sure enough, I'm like, "Well, it was a sketchy meet and greet on like 7-Eleven parking lot at 2 a.m. and I bought this." Or I went to this person's house, and after I bought all these items, he said, "Do you want to come in my bedroom and see my Smurf collection?" And crazy enough, I was like, "Sure, strange person, I'll go in your bedroom and look at your Smurf collection." And then I see the craziest Smurf collection of little figures and all kinds of stuff in this person's bedroom, like just crazy off the wall stuff. And it's like, you just have like a story behind all this, and it's like the memories behind it. And like maybe that's also the reason why like I won't let go of the stuff, but it's just so crazy. It's like, you all have something in your collection. Like, see how these game exchanges, like my Donkey Kong is my conversation piece because he has like, like the old plush little Donkey Kongs. He has
Yeah.
like a gigantic one. So there's like different sizes, and I think I have like the medium or like smaller one, but he has like this gigantic one that I've never seen. Austin does. So like I'd love to have something like that because like that really is like his conversation piece because it's like those weird things that you just don't see all the time. Like it's very cool.
Yeah, I love like hearing other people's like what they're like you can tell when it means something to them. You know what I mean? Like when you watch somebody on YouTube or even just have like a conversation with them in person and you're talking about your collection and then you hit that one thing where they're like, you watch their eyes light up and you're like, here we go. I get to hear about it all. Like, let's go. I love that. It's probably one of my favorite things about being in like, especially being in like this community. I like when you touch on that thing where they're like they just they can't wait to get it out.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of video game collecting going? Like, are there going to be people that want to have and curate these big, massive collections that you have, or do you think it's going to eventually get to a point where people just kind of fall out of it and don't want to collect anymore?
I see it going more digital, and I see like convenience kind of overtaking. I feel like we're in like a state of a world right now where like people don't really want to spend the money and they don't want to have what they deem as like clutter. Just because I talk to like a bunch of not to like put a damper on all this whole stuff, but I just maybe I see like there's still always going to be collectors and there's still going to be some physical media for like whether it's like a third party company or like something like limited run games or like strictly limited or something or like these collector's editions. But certainly when it comes to having full rooms in your house or full basements, I just don't necessarily see that being as prominent for a lot of people. Um so like I'd like to like maybe be proven wrong, but I talk to a lot of video game people and stuff at work and they all could care less about physical and they just want the quickest convenience and they don't care about reselling or getting their money back or whatever. And it's like they donate their stuff all the time. They donate like movies and things like that just because they don't want that physical stuff. So like I really do see it kind of going more towards that. And like I have a couple ins with some like developers and stuff, and they're telling me that they're kind of geared to create more digital stuff to stay away from physical when it comes to like for Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox. They're not really seeing like a push of the physical. So, um, but there's always going to be people who collect. I just don't necessarily see like the younger generations picking up this stuff at the same time. But I do see like I know he's getting ready to head out.
Yeah, thank you for coming
Um,
in.
but like conventions like that, like Southeast Game Exchange and all these other conventions, like I do see that continuing to grow because I think people maybe because they can't physically like harness all that stuff in their house,
Yeah.
like I think people will go for the experiences. Like I feel like there's a need for these conventions and there's a need for, wherever you live, whether you're traveling or you're going to one close to home, because they put on those experiences where you could play the arcade, where you get to see the voice actors, where you get to have those meet and greets, where you get to see your favorite content creator, where you get to shop for video games, where you get to meet other collectors. And like I feel like that has the potential to keep this going and content creators keeping this hype and stuff alive. But like sadly, I just see some things maybe not continuing. Like in another 20 years, are people going to have Atari games? Probably not. I feel like that generation is kind of, I wouldn't say dying off, but they're like selling off and they're getting less money than what they put into some things. And I hope that I don't see that with like Nintendo because Nintendo is such like a huge staple. But I feel like maybe people may not collect that stuff going forward. And then when you look at PS4, PS5, and certain games that are digital only, or they have a digital download code, or people going to have shelves full of those games. Like I don't see that. So um, it's not going to be what it is, and like the top time is probably now, and like during COVID of like the the hype of like the really expensive stuff. I'd like someone to prove me wrong, and I like things to be a little bit whatever, but I just don't see a lot of people wanting to come in and do this.
Yeah, I, I could see it going both ways. I could see it going to people still wanting to collect and, nostalgia, and there'll always be like someone that wants to have what they had as a kid, and there's always going to be people that, want to hold the physical object in their hand, but the convenience factor of digital I feel is probably going to win out, and it scares me. Like I don't know, like I like to have the physical in my hand, hold the game and put the disc in. Something about it just I like doing that. But I also do play, games on digital where I go on my PlayStation and I have digital games or my Switch and I play them. So like I think it's just finding that balance.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still think there will be people, and there will be people who like pay money for those collector's editions and stuff. I don't know if I see it being as big or continuously. Like I'm starting to see a lot of collectors selling their collections and a lot of people getting out of having a lot of physical media, or more so like curating, which is fine. Like it's fine if people curate, but I think like people who just like collect a little bit of everything, like I definitely don't see that continuing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
people who will do
I've
that.
never been to, a game convention or anything. I want to go to one, but I just haven't gotten to one. But I know going to like these like Monster Mania, it's all about the experience.
Yeah.
And the experience really like drives wanting to go. So I think, having these game conventions that people go to, I think it will help drive, this passion that we have.
Yeah, and like and everyone like hates on people, and people hate resellers and people hate certain YouTubers, but honestly, putting all this information out to a mass amounts of audience is going to keep this hobby alive. And I know people, they hate so much on like certain things, but literally you buy from resellers, whether they own a game store, whether they run it out of their basement or whatever. And I'm not trying to like promote reselling and all that stuff, but at the same time, it's like that kind of does keep the interest there. And if people think money and stuff can be made, I get it kind of makes it more difficult for people who are trying to collect the stuff. But at the same time, it keeps that interest alive. And like the goal is to have the younger audiences. And I just talked about that in my video. I was talking about remakes and remasters and how people are upset with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4. I just had it released today. But people are like, I'm gonna write it off because Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, they don't have that free play anymore, like that open world aspect. They're putting it into the 2 minute. But
Yeah.
if you completely write it off, they're not gonna make a Tony Hawk Underground 1 and 2. They're not going to continue this. It's not necessarily for you. It's for like the younger, newer generation of gamers coming
Yeah.
out there. Like there's a little bit of people for nostalgia, but you can't completely write that stuff off. Like when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out, the new era of the Turtles. We all love the originals. You know, everyone hates how they changed up so much, but it's not necessarily for you. It's for the younger generation of people. You can't always like think things are going to be for you, because then that's going to write off the younger crowd, the younger people, the future
Yeah.
of gaming, the future of Turtles, the future of this stuff. So it's like you see it, you appreciate it. Yeah, of course you love the original and stuff better, but they can't always keep going with the original for these like old farts like us. Like, you need to bring in that younger generation.
Yeah.
You need to have it relate more to the times, be more hip, be more whatever, be more relatable. And that's like the future of things. You can't like so like I understand it, whether I agree or don't agree, or I like or don't like certain things. It's like I don't want to completely write it off because I've waited so long for these Tony Hawk Pro Skater games to remake. Like in a remake, I don't think people understand it's not a remaster, it's a remake, and they can change up whatever they want
Yeah.
because it's but if it was a true remaster or true something else, like it would be more true to it. So like people, it's like a whole thing that you could debate on, but it's like we want this stuff to continue and we don't want it to like fall off and you
Yeah.
know, I
I
I don't want people boycotting.
I think people like, especially with new stuff, they're super critical to a fault, where they'll be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they didn't include this," or "It's 2025, how do you not have this mode in the game?" or blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah. And it's like, "Look, did you enjoy your experience with the game enough to play it, to beat it and be like, I would replay this game again?"
Uh-huh.
Like, that's what matters, is did you enjoy your time? It doesn't matter on what features they had, what they didn't have, whether they have free roam, whether they don't. Like, I, for one, really enjoy them doing these like remasters and remakes of games, because I like looking at something that I
Mhm.
enjoyed when I was a kid, whether it be Tony Hawk, whether it be Resident Evil 2, and when they announce a remake for it where they're actually going from the ground up and redoing the whole thing,
Mhm.
what is it going to be like? And then you play it and you're like, I remember this, but I love seeing it how it is now versus what
Yeah.
it was. And people are super critical about, like, oh, they took it out, like how could they, it's garbage. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, it's fantastic. Like, Resident Evil 3 remake, like, yeah, they cut out a ton of
Yeah,
content from
way
that game,
shorter,
but for
but
what
you
it
appreciate it.
was, it was fine. Like, it wasn't my favorite remake, but I
Mhm.
enjoyed it because it brought this game that normally, like, somebody that's just getting into gaming wouldn't have played, but now they get to play it because they get to play from like an over the shoulder third person angle, and it's more friendly for that type of gamer, and it brings it into the current gens of consoles, and you can enjoy the story and like what Resident Evil really is. It's like this massive story with all this deep lore and all of this stuff. And like Tony Hawk, like, those games are so iconic.
Mhm.
So 1 and 2 was fantastic. The remakes for
Yeah.
those were incredible. Why would you not think 3 and 4 aren't going to be the exact same just because they don't have a free roam in 4? Who cares? Like, they're
Yeah,
going
like I
to be
know people
fantastic.
Yeah, like I know people are gonna they're so upset about it, but like it makes sense to do them both together instead of separately.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a little easier, maybe it was a cheaper route because then you would have to have all these like voice actors and stuff for like the mini little like things. Like I understand that it kind of does change how it is, but I don't think it's going to be the worst thing in the world. Like I'm still going to buy it. I'm still going to support it. Already ordered the collector's edition, even though I'm on like a buying games freeze kind of at the moment. But like, I kind of did break that just for that game.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy that people are like, don't support it, this, that, the third, maybe they'll change it. Like, I'm just glad because I didn't have to do a remake at all. They could have just like stopped and they could have like never did it again. And if you're so hurt on it, like you could buy an older system and you could play it the
Yeah.
exact same way. I'm kind of excited to see how it is and I'm willing to, give it a fair try. And then if it does well, I don't see them changing, Underground 1 and 2. I see them doing a remaster or remake of that and have 1 and 2 in there, but at the same time with like Bam and not really having him, maybe that won't happen. But if they did, I don't see them making it time related. So maybe they'll make it up on that. So like I don't want to completely write it off and then them not do that because I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Um,
And like,
you know, and
what Bacon
yeah.
said here is he said he'd really like to play RE4 uh remake. And one, that's go buy it right now. Right this
Yeah.
very second. Stop what you're doing, go buy it, play it, cuz it's fantastic.
It's like
But
my favorite of all of them.
it's so good. But what, like, when that was announced, my initial like thought for that was like, I don't really think that they need to remake that game. I wasn't
Mhm.
against it. I wasn't like writing it off, but in my head I was like, the way that game plays, like, it's very like friendly. It's not
Yeah.
like jarring. So it's like, I don't know why they need to remake that game. But I bought the collector's edition, and then I played it, and I was like, oh my god, thank the Lord that they remade this, because this is absolutely beautiful. And that's like, you should understand by now, like, that there's these remakes and remasters, just because they take something out or they're changing something, is it doesn't mean that it's going to not capture that magic of the original. Like, it might not capture it as hard, but you're going to play it and be like, yep, I remember this. Okay.
No, and I mean, I know sometimes they like butcher things, or things like that aren't always the best. And like someone was even saying, like with Last of Us, it was real quick to do like a remaster. And
Yeah.
some things it's like I still appreciate some of like the effort on some of these things, just because there's so many franchises that are like long lost that they won't revive. Like um Left 4 Dead. I loved both of those games, and there was supposed to be a Left 4 Dead 3 and they never did it. But then they came out with something similar, Back for Blood, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And then there's like so many other franchises that I've made videos and stuff on of, like, I wish they'd come back in today's time, or I wish they'd make more. And it's like I'd rather there be companies that do these remakes or try to do remasters or try to do this, because there's just so many that are like lost that won't come back. And like like with F-Zero and stuff, there's like so many games where it's like, hello, like certain things they could make more of or continue the story and make money on it, and sometimes that stuff never happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes you want something and they don't give it to you, or you could have everybody wanting it and they're still not going to give it to you. But just be glad that they're giving it to you. But
Yeah.
I would love to sit here and talk to you for hours on end about everything, but I have two young kids that I got to get to bed.
I know, and I feel like as I said here, sorry everyone, my voice is like in and out. I feel like I'm getting like even more sick, even with some of these cough drops.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. This was a great podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you to everybody who joined in. Until next time, guys.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, and we'll talk more.